Hi, this is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs the Playbook, and I am so excited. I have Alix Peabody. She's the CEO of Bev. And Alix, I had to have you on because number one, you don't look like your standard CEO. And
Oh,
I
well,
love the
thank
fact that
you.
I'm saying you're what I want my girls to dream to be. And I believe that vision is such an important thing that if we can see someone like us in a position that we either want or even want to go beyond, it's so much easier when that is someone that's like us in some way or another. When you kind of went through your journey, I know you're an Ivy Leaguer, but there wasn't many, mentors that you could look up to and say, wow, I want to be just like her, because there was so few real women entrepreneur. I know that's changed over the years, but even less women CEOs. How did you surpass that visionary thing to say, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to be one of the Mavericks and help other young women achieve their goals?
Oh, well, you are so kind. I mean, it's interesting because I do believe that, what we see around us really gives us the permission to be what we want to be. And I think, in my situation, there are a bunch of female CEOs that I've looked up to that have kind of, low-key Instagram stalked for years now, I suppose. And they're becoming more and more, but it's still, it's still sparse. And so that said, I went to an all-girls school when I was younger, which I actually think was a pretty interesting thing, because looking back on it, I never had a moment when I was really young where I was like, oh, I can't be the president of my class, or, I can't be in that leadership position because there were only women. And so I think that, paired with the fact that my family has always been really, really supportive of women in leadership and always urged me to, to do whatever it is that I want to do. It never dawned on me really until college that there would be an issue with that.
It's easy for, even though I grew up with nothing, my mom was an optimist and a total supporter. She's just everything, made us think we were too good looking, too smart. We could do anything that we wanted. And I always say, that's one of my superpowers is I didn't know any better until you go to college and you start looking around going, wait a second, maybe my mom was wrong. Um, uh, but moreover, what advice would you give when people aren't surrounded with mentors or the ideas and support that they need? Because I know around entrepreneurs, there's a lot of people that have been able to create a framework in which they're successful. And I admire them because I look at their background. I'm like, how did you overcome all of that negativity, all of the scarcity and obstruction and objection that you were getting? What advice do you give to those types of people that have to overcome some of the obstacles and noise that you and I had not?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm definitely not per se qualified to give them much advice, but I think that, I think there are some things that every entrepreneur has in common, no matter your background, that a lot of the time people are just going to think that you're a little crazy, right? And you're convincing people that something that does not exist should exist in the world, and that you're the person to do it. Now you have to be like a little insane to really do that and to believe it. I think it can be a bit of a fine line. And I think one of the things that I say to my team a lot is that, once you've set your mind to something, you have to have the mentality that the only way out is through. And you really have to think about, failure is no option. And I am just going to keep going day by day, bit by bit, until I get to where I want to go. And that's something that I always have thought about. And it's kind of, over time, as there have been all sorts of struggles. And I mean, this is an interesting time for sure. But my mentality has almost been to live my life as if I'm looking at it in retrospect. That sounds really weird. But what I mean by
Sound like
that
Steve
is I
Jobs.
have a moment now. Yeah, is it? I don't know. I that's just how I think about it. So I have a moment now, and I'm like, okay, so looking back on this moment, how am I going to figure it out? Because I know I'm going to. And having that, deep sort of conviction in what you're doing, I think helps, especially when things are so unstable. So I kind of look and I'm like, how am I going to, I know I'm going to get through it. I wonder how I'm going to figure this one out, is more of the mentality than, oh no, what do I do? There's so much adversity.
Yeah, it's interesting because Steve Jobs used to always tell me, look, connect the dots backwards. And I was trying to figure that
Really?
out.
I didn't know
More and
that.
more entrepreneurs Like that is another key question that I ask, which is interesting because I know how you're going to answer this, but because you said that, I ask entrepreneurs sometimes when they have a vision of the past and the future, if I could send you either place, would you like to go backwards into the past or would you like to go forward into the future?
I mean, probably forward into the future, but that is a really interesting question. I mean, I don't know. There's so many things that I would do differently, but I also, those things are also so important to like the fabric of who I am and what I've built at this point. I don't know. Does that even make sense? I don't
Yeah.
know, but
Well, it's interesting because so many more people are using people say the past because they're not afraid of the future. But whenever circumstances changes where our future is uncertain, more people want to go to the future to make sure
yeah.
things are okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I would do differently and do over, yet nothing at the same time. I mean, that sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's true. I think there's just, that's a really interesting question. I don't
A
know.
lot of companies can do that. Moreover, too, you're in a crowded space. Bev is in a crowded space, and I love to see successful people in a crowded space. So when I started my career out of law school, I worked for a company called West Publishing, and 3 years after I was there, we sold for $3.4 billion in 1995. But
Ooh, not
everybody, everybody was in like, there's so much competition, blah, blah, blah. And I always said, look, competition isn't necessarily bad. What are some of the positive things that you looked at as you built a business in a crowded space about the competition that you have? What were some of the positive things that you were looking at?
Yeah, so to be honest, I don't really look at them at all.
Hey.
And I think that's, I mean, occasionally, obviously, and I think we're in a category that's growing. And so in that sense, all of the competition, like we're all building the category together that's expanding space on the shelf. But when it comes to, if I'm busy looking sideways or looking backwards, I'm not looking at what is right in front of us. And I think for me, it's really about, the brand, the mission of what we're doing, what we're trying to build. And they can do, what they do. And there's enough, I mean, I think there's enough room for us all to play, and so I don't, I don't look at them all that much at all.
Love that. Well,
there's
there's an
there's a
old
Slack
saying.
channel and that's like competition, and it's occasionally like, oh, that was a good idea, like, oh look, they got that, but other
Look,
than that, it's kind
it's smart because the old saying in racing cars that when they're training, if you keep your eye on the cones when you're training, that they always hit the cones when they're staring at the cones instead of on the road that they want to be on. Those drivers always continue on. So you're looking at the road where you want to be. You don't care where those cones are. That's
100%. It's actually funny you say that. The other, just random anecdote, but like the other day I was literally thinking about how like I'm not as good of a driver if I'm looking at the space right in front of me, and it's like if I'm only looking like down there, you can see in the periphery, but you're really like focused up there. And I was actually thinking about that while I was actually driving the other day.
that's awesome.
But it's a good metaphor. I mean, it's true, right? You're looking, as long as you're looking at where you're going, you'll get there.
Yeah. And then in the same respect, in these uncertain times, I tell people you can get from San Diego to Maine at night, just seeing in 3 feet in front of you. So keep your eyes, 3 feet in front of you,
Yeah.
you'll get there. Now, I call you a frequency expert because, whenever you have a successful business in a crowded space, it's because you carry a certain frequency. You understand branding. How do you build a brand? You really have built such a strong brand in a crowded space.
Thanks.
You have your own frequency, if that makes any sense. How are you able to build that frequency?
Yeah, I think that the word authentic is overused these days to the point where it's become no longer authentic.
Right.
But I think the reality is that people want things that are real and that they relate to. And if it was funny because at the very beginning when I started, when people started saying like, oh, your brand, I was almost like, what are you talking about? Like, this is just, this is just our baby. This is like our ethos. Like it almost felt like you were stripping,
the energy out of it.
Yeah. It was weird at the beginning and I've gotten a little more used to it, but I think not losing that where it's the connectivity of, the people building it, what they believe in, what they're excited about. And, for us, it's like the vibrancy, the colors, the the people that we're trying to relate to and have conversations with as a company. I almost prefer, the word company to brand. It's kind of funny because I was thinking about that the other day too, the company you keep, right? It's like the people you surround yourself with, the energy you surround yourself with. And the fact that those words are the same is kind of funny to me, right? And so I think that is really what it's about. It's, who's building it, what do you believe, and how do you inject what you're doing with the ethos of who you are and what you want to be and the message you want to put out into the world. And that in and of itself is going to pick up a frequency, right? To me anyway. So I think, you can kind of, the consumer sees through it.
Yeah, you've built a community, you've surrounded yourself with the right people and the right ideas. I can definitely see that. One of the other issues in your business is the rapid expansion from successful companies. So one of the big issues that I've seen with the companies that I've consulted with is the successful ones, their biggest challenge is because they're successful. There's a huge leap when a brand is accessible and grows in your space. You go from, okay, we're at this size, then all of a sudden it's huge and you have real strains on the economy and the capital. And the
oh yeah.
What have you learned through that process?
Oh man, I've made so many mistakes through this process. I don't even know where to start. I think, keeping, as an entrepreneur, it's easy to, be, and you're surrounded by sort of like the VC consumer, companies that are all around. And it's easy to be like thinking of all of the branding stuff and the ethos stuff and the stuff that's fun, but it's so important to keep your eye on the cash flow and to make sure that you can manage it well. And I think, we're at a decision point right now too, with everything that's happening in the economy, where it's like, do we grow a little bit more slowly? Do we enter the markets a little bit more slowly in order to make sure that capital is constantly there and that you're making good decisions for the business? And I think that's something, I'm a sole founder, so I don't really have like a partner who's looking at the numbers and, a partner that's looking at the brand. It's me. And I think it's easy. It's easy to let that slip sometimes when you really are thinking about, growth and being big and being big. It's so much more important to be small well, if that makes sense. And that's something that I've learned the hard way, I would say.
It's really easy to get excited.
Yeah.
Last question as we finish up. Obviously, we're in a period of repurposing and reengineering. The universe has given us a great opportunity to pause and re-examine things. But I've always been, maybe it's self-serving, but I've been a true believer that the entrepreneurs will always save the world. That when push comes to shove, it's the Elon Musk that convert their factories into respirator factories and that, solve the environmental problems and cure diseases. These are truly entrepreneurial problems. And you truly are, in the spirit of an entrepreneur, an icon for what you do. There's certain characteristics that you have that people need to apply now. Every day, people will say that need to have these superpowers of an entrepreneur. What's one of the superpowers that you have as an entrepreneur that you think that people can utilize during these, changing times, what I call reengineering and repurposing or pause that we're taking? Is there one characteristic that you have that you think would really help everybody during this period of time that we're going through?
Oh man. Someone said to me recently that this is an opportunity to actually build the company you want, right? And to, a lot of those shiny objects, they're just not feasible, for people. And what I've said to my team as well, and the people that I work with is that's true not only if you're an entrepreneur of a business, but it's also true of a way that you want to live your life, right? And I think it's back to basics in times like this, and it's back to making sure that who you are on the inside is aligning with who you want to be on the outside and figuring out what that play is. And I think that this is a time, while people aren't commuting and, have more time at home and they're trying to sort of sort out a little bit of what life is going to look like now, it's a really good time to revisit, who you want to, how you want to show up in the world. that's something that I try to work on every day. But there's some stuff that we found out that we can do, like buying ethanol from our suppliers and helping make, extra hand sanitizer and stuff like that. I think there's little ways that everybody can be helping.
It's amazing. I just got off a meeting with Success Resources, and they were saying the exact same thing: culture and cash. And those are the two that I got from you. You got to, build that culture when you're take a step back. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how you make it through this period of time and really expand and accelerate. I can tell Bev is going to be a great success, but Alix, you especially, you're one of my new favorite entrepreneurs. So anything you to help. I really
You're one of my new favorite people too.
Oh, you're wonderful. I look forward to meeting you in person at a YPO event. And thank you so much for joining me during these crazy times. Being one of my first online interviews, it's not easy. Both of us were fumbling around. So hopefully our editors will take care.
Sweatpants on the bottom. So
you're awesome. If you need anything, let me know. Thank you so much. Alix Peabody, CEO of Bev with David Meltzer, Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.